it was going to be all three of us. And at the last minute, my nephew pulled out and said, I've got a business venture going with just about every family member, and I think I want to be able to have one family member that I don't have to talk business with at holidays.
Yeah.
So.
Hello, everybody. This is Seth Williams and Jaron Barnes of the REtipster podcast. And in today's show, we're talking with David VanSteenkiste. Did I get it right, David?
You got it.
Awesome.
I'm proud of you, Seth.
That
was an accomplishment of the year.
I just learned how to pronounce his name like 3 minutes before we started recording this. So pretty proud of myself. David, he's one of these names and faces that I have continually seen pop up in all my social media feeds for years. And a lot of the various land-related conversations I've seen around the internet, he just frequently chimes in with his thoughts and suggestions for others about how to handle various challenges and situations. And so, I've seen his name and his face around. I didn't really know a lot about his background, though. But a few months ago, he started telling me how his land business has actually grown to the point where he's been able to quit his day job and work his business full time, which is a massive milestone. I mean, for a lot of us in the land business, that's ultimately what we want to do. Like, how do we get to that point where I can pull the plug on my job and live a life of freedom and get there? And he's sort of like walking proof that it's possible, and he's done it. So he's clearly figured a few things out, and he's probably got some insights that are worth paying attention to. So if you are in the land business and you want to grow to the point where you have total autonomy, or even if you're considering jumping into the land investing game, or real estate investing in general, like you're in real estate investing and you want to do that as your full-time gig, David is an example of what's possible when you take the business seriously and you decide to really run after your goals of building financial freedom. So David, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Seth.
Very cool. So just to kick this off, why don't you give us your background? When and how did you first learn about the land flipping, land investing niche, and what made you decide to give it a shot?
Yeah, great question. So I think it was back in sometime in 2014, actually. I had been, a long career before that, engineering and sales and management, and led me to a point in 2011 where I really wanted to do something different. I started studying about real estate investing, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that kind of gave me the bug. And so I got started in houses. I got started flipping houses, acquired a couple of rentals. And so in 2014, the market here, especially in Colorado, was really getting tight. It was difficult to keep enough deal flow in the pipeline to really feel confident in your income. And I think I saw one of the gurus doing a podcast or doing a webinar, and I devoured that, bought the course, and just went through it in about a weekend and got started right away. And sent out some mailers to test things, and lo and behold, I got some deals. And it was pretty easy to make the transition to land. What I liked about the concept was creating cash flow through notes, but also the fact that you could automate and outsource so much of this business. One of the things that about in houses, especially in a tight market, you get a call from a wholesaler, you get a lead. You vet it for 5 minutes on the computer, and then you got to run out the door and go look at it. And in this market, I would literally, I was on every wholesaler's list as a fix and flipper, and I would literally be at the property in 45 minutes from the time it went out on the text message, and it was gone already.
Man, that's crazy.
Discouraging. Yeah. So, I loved the concept of land because it's slower moving. You don't have the competition like that with houses. You don't have to run out and look at it. And the fact that you can outsource it. I mean, I did close to 100 deals, and as you know, you've probably very rarely set foot on a property. I've never set foot on a single property, and that's what I love about it. So I started up, I proved it, and then I got a job offer, one that was really hard to refuse, and based on the situation, I took it. I looked back and I looked at the situation and said to myself, okay, I can go back to work in an industry I'm familiar with, and we'll grow this land business on the side. Because of the nature of the way it works, you can do that. And so I shelved it for about a year and a half, because, as you know, starting a new job, even if it's an industry you're familiar with, there's a lot to learn, get up and running and things like that. So I started back to doing it part-time, and it took off immediately because I already had the foundation. And having been in the other aspects of real estate, I didn't have any qualms. It didn't make me nervous to pull the trigger on a little bit of money, $5,000, $10,000. It was easy for me. Where I can see people with no experience at all, it's like, they haven't had that experience. So it's a little harder for them to get rolling and to trust their gut, trust themselves, that they're doing things right. Anyway, it took off, and I just kept. So my first goal was, all right, I'm living off of my salary. My first goal was to do. I was selling some cash, some terms, and I didn't have unlimited resources, so I had to sell some cash. But the goal was, number one, build the cash flow up to pay for my overhead. First, to fund my VA and my subscriptions. You need a few subscriptions, online tools and things like that, the bare bones, and then to fund my mailers. So have the cash flow to cover my overhead. And
out
then,
of curiosity, Dave, when you say you need a few subscriptions, which ones were they and how much did they cost for people who are curious about what's involved?
So good question. You've got tools, such as your marketing subscriptions. If you're marketing on the land.com sites like LandWatch, Land and Farm. Now, back then they weren't so expensive. They've really raised their prices.
And those are for anybody who isn't familiar with that, those are the websites where you can list and sell your properties.
Due diligence stuff, your data services, whether it's Agent Pro or Data Tree or CoreLogic, any of those, you got to pay for your data. And then there's a lot of stuff that, quite frankly, back office work and things that you've got to have a VA do. Otherwise, you'll just never get it done, and the business really won't be very fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So we're talking like probably, and actually, I can tell you, I should have been the way that you were in terms of being very open and willing to pay for those kind of things. I was like a tightwad. Like I had to do it all myself.
No, Seth, not you.
Spending like $2 was like the epitome of evil for me. So yeah, I mean, I paid a big price just in terms of like it taking me a lot longer to do the same number of deals and that kind of thing. So anyway, it sounds like the price of that per month can range from, like, would you say you're paying a few $100s a month for that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't answer that part of the question. Yeah, I mean, you starting out, it's a couple $100s a month, but it's very quickly this tool and that tool, and as you grow, a few more hours for your VA. So you can hit several $100s a month, and then you get up to $1,000 a month pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And I would say that's a pretty good number to shoot for people. If you're just starting out, figure, hey, I to cover my overhead, I'm going to be about $1,000, and then marketing letters, marketing campaigns is going to be go from there. Yeah. So really, when I was kind of clicking, I would say my spend on mail plus my overhead was about $2,000 a month.
What are you doing in terms of mail? What did you start off with? Did you start off with postcards? What were you, and what are you doing now?
So it's funny. So recently I've had a transition. My company, Mile High Rural Land, I recently took on a partnership, and our new company is called Liberty Land Sales, and that was when I stepped off from my job in November. And so now I did postcards when I first started, and then I moved into blind offer letters, the 2-page blind offer letters. So I've kind of studied everybody. I started with the Land Geek course in Land Academy, and then I found Seth. So I've mixed and matched a little bit of everybody's materials. And then, but more recently, since we formed Liberty, our volume have gone from, my mailers at Mile High were kind of averaging about 1,200 a month, but by the time I scrubbed them down, and every now and then I'd miss a month. But now we're doing 10,000 a month. We're basically sending 500 a day. And that is a combination of the 2-page blind offer and neutral offers. So I basically price a list. If there's good data and I price it out with blind offers in my offer column, then my VA knows, all right, this sectional list is going to be blind offers. And then if I don't have good, easy, quick data where I can price it without spending hours and hours, then the rest of the list doesn't get priced and it goes out in a neutral letter. Mm-hmm. But we are actually looking at experimenting with some postcards again.
Mm-hmm. What do you, in terms of targeting counties, so when you identify a county that you're hitting, mm-hmm. are you wide blanket, everybody? Are you doing absentee, out of state? And what exactly in what you're targeting, how many times are you hitting them before you rotate to a new list?
Yeah. So once a year, unless we find a honey hole, but yes, I'm blanketing the whole county. I don't discriminate with, back tax or out of state. I understand that might yield you a higher yield percentage, but in my view, once you hit a critical mass, mail is cheap, and you're leaving way too many people out. In fact, some of my best sellers have been in-state, non-tax deficient. I have a guy I just bought 3 properties from last week. This is probably the 7th or the 8th, 9th, and 10th property I've bought from him. He actually lives in the county of the properties. And, a lot of people will say, well, that's usually not the best sellers because they have a little more of emotional attachment. They're more aware of what's going on in the area and the values. But I don't leave anybody out.
So I have a question about this. This is coming, and I'm really curious to hear your take on it, because when you came from the house flipping world, right? When you were doing direct mail underneath that hat, mm-hmm. It's very, very, very common to farm a particular market, right? So you coming from wholesaling, I was told that you have to touch somebody 7 times before you can even come close to considering a list exhausted. But in land, it's never sat right with me that we live under this ideology that you only hit a county, one list, one time per year. I tried to hit a list twice and I had horrible results. So proof is in the pudding, but I'm just curious, why do you think that is? And have you experimented with hitting the list several times? Dive into that for us.
First of all, I have experimented a little bit with hitting it twice, but not the whole list. What I've done is, if I found a spot that was kind of a honey hole, so maybe it's a subdivision or a sub area within a county, that maybe I pulled a couple of nice deals out, and I realized that, I'll think of, there's a particular area in southern Colorado that has been a nice honey hole for me, a couple of them. And
what are their zip codes? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. High demand and and I've been able to sell them for really nice prices. So when I got those deals done, it was, you know, I don't know, 3-4 months probably had passed by the time I bought those, sold them, and came back and reviewed it. And I said, you know what, let's go back and just target this micro area with higher offers, because I can sell them for plenty. You know, I was tripling and quadrupling my money. So I'm like, let's go back in there. They sell fast. If I double my money, I'm okay with that. So I've fished out a couple of those little micro holes like that. But as a general practice, repeating a whole mailer across the county, I don't typically do that.
Why do you think that in land that's the case? Whereas, I see like expert secrets on your shelf back there. I'm sure that you and anybody else who's doing business full time is, you know, studying marketing. But in marketing, the general rule of thumb is that like you need to touch your list and your prospects several times and nurture these leads, right?
Right.
But in land, we don't like it for whatever reason. This is like the one outlier industry that I know of where that's just not the case, and I don't understand why.
So my thoughts on that is that with people selling your land, it's out of sight, out of mind. It's the people that decide to sell to you. It's less emotional. It's not about the asset. It's about their situation, and they get some quick, easy money. You know, they might live out of state, they might not, but they might live 2 hours away and they never go to the property. They inherited it. Mom and Pop bought it 40 years ago with dreams of building a cabin on it, and 40 years have gone by, and Pa's not around, and Ma gets a tax bill, and she gets your letter. But you know, you could mail every 6 months. But with housing, like for example, when I was mailing to houses back in 2012, 2013, I was doing a lot of pre-foreclosure stuff. There's a big difference because there's stages of that pre-foreclosure, as you know. At first they're in denial, and then they think that maybe they can save it, and then some get to the point where they wake up and say, okay, I'll deal with you. And then there's certainly other situations. You look at probate, for example. That's another good one where it's you got to nurture them for a long time. It's more about the asset, I think, but I'm not sure. I have the same question back to you.
Do you have any insights, Seth?
What's that? Do I have any insights on why the land only requires one hit or that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what Dave was saying. It's just the people typically are in a different situation, and they don't need a huge push to take action. Like, you really just need anybody to prompt them at all, and then they would move. Whereas with houses, I don't know, if you find yourself on a list that's getting hammered by different wholesalers, like, you kind of realize, hey, I've got sort of a hot asset here that people are willing to fight over. And I don't know. I mean, part of my brain thinks I understand it really well, and part of it's kind of just theoretical. Like, I can't understand every person's individual situation, but just when you look at it as a whole, that's kind of how it seems to work.
Yeah, it's just weird because I feel like wholesalers are targeting people that have the same type of motivation as people who sell land. That they have for quick cash. Like, we're hitting kind of the same pain points, but in wholesaling, the rule of thumb goes that you want to send the same list at least 7 times. But in land, it's like, and from experience, I saw firsthand that it didn't work. Like, when I hit the list the second time, it didn't work. It bothers me because it flies in the way of conventional wisdom.
It could just be, I mean, I don't know how many times you've done that. It could just be that you've done that one time, and that one time it didn't work. I mean, it's not necessarily a conclusive thing that you're saying, but it's kind of funny to me because when I think about somebody who owns a house that's vacant, I mean, if that was me, that is a major problem. Like, that's a huge issue. I mean, the problem is falling apart. I mean, people are breaking into it. The grass is overgrown, getting notices from the city. Like, it's a big, big pain point. A vacant lot is like nothing. Like, who cares? Other than the tax bill, what's the big deal? So it's almost kind of seems backwards to me. Like you'd think,
also people think, whenever you've talked to a homeowner, obviously, or, for sale by owner, they always overvalue the asset. They always think it's worth way more. Well, this is going for that because I saw it on Zillow and it's for sale. And I was like, well, if I could ask $1 million, that doesn't mean it's going for $1 million. I think that's part of it. On a lot of this land, it's really easy to go on and see to Land Watch or even Zillow and say, yeah, this stuff's pretty cheap, and then you ask them, you think a realtor's going to be willing to waste their time on that? At that price point? They will for a house, even if it's a $50,000 house. That's a little bit more commission than a $10,000 or $15,000 piece of land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave, can you give us any examples of deals you've done, just so we can kind of get an idea for, I don't know, some of the average deals, some of the best deals you've done, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So, wow, it's all over the board, but kind of an average deal that we do, that I've done, is buy for $3,500 and sell for 10 to 15, and maybe sell that on terms for anywhere from 18 to 24, 25,000. But so one of my favorite deals I ever did was. I actually mispriced a property way low and she accepted it. It was about situation. So I bought this really nice 2-acre parcel for $500. And I turned around a few days, sold it for $16,000. Man, that's one of my favorites. And I never even communicated at all with the buyer, not a text, not an email. I woke up, they had seen it, went out and saw it, went on my website and checked out.
Awesome. Oh, so you're selling them on your website with a credit card checkout thing, or?
Yeah.
Well, tell us about that. How's that system working for you? What are you using to process payments, and do people just click a button on your website, or?
It was that way until Stripe shut me down. So I'm actually a good person to talk to.
What you just said there, I think, is really important, because I've had people vehemently deny and say that I'm crazy or stupid for telling people to not use Stripe, but that is very possible. You're technically not supposed to do that, and it's very easy to get by without them ever noticing. But if they do, it's bye Stripe account. So just be aware of that.
Yeah. So actually, I have a pretty good take on this subject. In fact, I was on a mastermind last Monday where all these people were talking about different stuff, and I just had to chime in and say, "All right, cut it. I've been through it all. Let me tell you. Yeah. Here's the scoop." So, I started out using Zimple Money, and I actually at that point I don't exactly remember how I was taking the down payment, but then I really wanted more automation, and so I went to MoonClerk. I'd seen what guys like Luke Smith were doing with MoonClerk, and now their foundation is Stripe, their merchant. And so, but what I really loved about MoonClerk is that it's one checkout. You can set up the form, put a link in your back end of your WordPress. They click checkout, it comes up, they can put their credit card information for the down payment and or doc fee, and then it goes to set up the recurring payment. And they put everything in. And so you don't have to, and it sends them a receipt. Later on you can send them documentation, but it's true e-commerce. You wake up in the morning and the deal is done and the payment's set up, and it's really easy. But it's not a true loan processing thing. It's for online subscriptions and things like that. So you can't charge interest in the true sense of that. Like you could factor on the interest to the end of the loan and then divide that up and make that the payment. So you're getting interest, but your buyer has no way to pay their interest down early. They don't have the same incentives to pay off more quickly. And if they do want to make any extra payments, you gotta manually go in there and manipulate it. So, but other than that, great solution. But then as I was really starting to crank up, I had a chargeback. It was a big chargeback. And, I always tried to, if I was going to give a customer a refund, write them a check. So it didn't go through the credit card purchasing, but they did it before they asked me. Anyway, I got a big chargeback, and that's what got me red flagged and got me on the radar, and I got shut down. Mm. And I even tried to go back and reopen the account under a different name, and, couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So
how have you been getting your properties sold? Like what are the best tools that get results for you in the markets where you're working?
Best tools that result, I use the land.com sites. I also use Facebook, and I use Craigslist. I'm using the Seth Julielan's Julian. I can't pronounce his name. Julian,
I think
his Craigslist for land investors methodology, and my VAs are running that. Mm-hmm. So for certain price points, that works really well. Mm-hmm. And then land.com, Land and Farm, Land Watch. Haven't delved much into the using the sites like Landmodo and Rural Vacant Land yet. Taking a look at those. We're actually doing a whole new comprehensive marketing plan for our new company. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be doing some additional paid traffic and more on YouTube.
Of all of those different platforms, like what would you say is like which one is number one most responsible for the most sales, and then number two and number three? Like if you really had to hone in on the 80-20 thing, like what would you spend most of your time on?
I would say probably Land Watch.
Okay.
But it depends on the price point. Let's say middle to higher end. Let's say maybe from over 10 grand, over 15 grand. That works really well. The cheaper stuff works really well on Craigslist. Facebook, the buy sell groups. It's kind of a hassle, but it's started to produce. Your lead quality there isn't. I mean, when I say lead quality, I mean the percentage of closes is low. You get a ton of leads. It produces a lot of leads, but not as many deals. And when I first started using it, I thought, this is bogus. But then all of a sudden, boom, 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 I closed some deals on Facebook. So I think having the right strategy and having VAs monitor it and do all the messaging back and forth is critical, and to get those people into your funnel. Like I was literally using my personal account for it before, and there was a lot of messaging back and forth, which is a big time suck. And then but there was no follow through, not as much follow through as there should have been, where you get 2, 3, 4 questions into there. Maybe they look at the property that they were interested in on your website, and maybe that wasn't the right property for them. But you want to get those in your funnel so you can keep them in your email feed. And I'm sure I have hundreds of leads sitting in Facebook Messenger that have never been routed into my funnel.
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend last week who's been doing a lot with just getting leads from Facebook in the buy sell trade groups and Facebook Marketplace as the initiation, and then he has a sequence to nurture them. And he says that it's a great source for leads in the long run, but in the short term, it's a lot of tire kickers, and it can be a little frustrating. I'm curious if we ever figure out how to do bots, Seth, Facebook bots, if we could set those up in groups. I don't know if you can, but that would be epic, because you could just have a bot going all the time that answers all of the questions.
That would be cool. I don't know anything about that, but I know there is a science behind it. I'm just kind of clueless on how it all works.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. You can't be an expert on everything. You got to use your team.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to go back to Moon Clark and Stripe for a minute. What are you doing now? Like, we left this massive cliffhanger. Like, you know, like, oh, I got shut down. It's a great interview, guys. See you later.
Yep. So then I actually moved all my notes. I see. Zipple Money charges a setup fee for every note. And by then I had quite a few notes when I got shut off, and I really didn't want to go back and pay that setup fee. So then I went to Geekpay. And actually it's been a pretty good tool for me. Every tool has its strengths and weaknesses, but overall it's been a pretty good tool for me. I don't have that complete automation now. So I have a checkout form on my website, which allows them to put a down payment, doc fee, or if they're paying cash, I'll take credit card payments up to $10,000. When they check out, then my VA gets an email, and then it routes into our CRM, creates a sale, and spits out all the data for the contract. So the VA can go on, view the contract, and then she goes to Geekpay, sets up the loan, and emails the client the link to enter their ACH checking account information. So that's what we're using now.
Mm-hmm. So using Geekpay, I'm just curious. I think that there's like the way their pricing structure works is they say like up to, I think, 50 loans or something like that. And then it's kind of ambiguous. Do you happen to have over 50 loans? If just curious, because it'd be great just personally to hear what happens after you get 50 loans. Is it 50 loans, Seth? Am I hitting the right number?
I don't remember. I think you're right. It's been so long since I've looked at that pricing.
Yeah, I think it's up to 50. It's $150 a month. Used to be 99. And I charge a $20 a month note processing fee. So after 7.5 loans, that's pure profit. It's nice extra revenue to get $20 a note. I'm still in the 40s, so I haven't hit that 50 threshold. And that's with my company. With Liberty, we haven't started our sales process yet. We just started sending mail in mid-December. So we are acquiring like crazy. I think we bought about 15 properties so far, and our website is about 80% done. So next week we'll start working on the sales channels and getting the marketing going. But what I'm using as a checkout is Heartland Payment Systems. Heartland has been really good, great to work with. They're not a reseller like a Stripe or an Authorize, so you're going to pay a little bit less on your credit card fees. I don't remember what the rates are. They're one of the 7 or 9 direct merchants, and they have said in writing that they're cool with the land business.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
it's kind of a big deal. When you say Heartland, is that HEARTLAND?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yep. Heartland Payment System.
I'll link to that in the show notes, by the way. For anybody.
Yeah, they've been great. Haven't had any issues with them. They've integrated nicely. Our programmers were able to integrate them into our web form in our website, and then the cool thing we're doing too is we're working. We use Landspeed. Got to throw a plug in there for Landspeed. Yeah. Love Landspeed.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so we actually have it set up. So we create our ad in Landspeed, and we push it to our website. Goes directly into WordPress. If I want to make a pricing change, I go into one of the apps in Podio, so everything's right there in Landspeed. Make a change, push it to the web, it changes. When somebody does the checkout, all the data is linked to the web form. So they check out, and it creates a buyer and creates a sale in Landspeed. And so all the data is there, creates a task for my VA, so my VA can go in and look at it, check it. It also pings me if I want to review the data. But usually what she'll do, she'll go in and then she clicks a couple of buttons and she can create the contract. And it just does a mail merge with all the data that's already in Landspeed. And then when that's created, then that actually pings me to review it. And I can either say, oh, you need to change this, or change it myself, or say, yep, it's good. And then she uploads it to Sign Now and emails it to the customer for signature.
Mm-hmm. Was Landspeed, like, did that take you a while to figure out that system to like really get your arms around how it worked?
Yeah.
Because I think, and this is kind of just my own personal commentary, I think it's, from what I've seen, it's probably the best CRM system for land out there, but it's not like a quick, easy, I'm going to pick it up in 5 minutes type thing. Like, it takes a lot of understanding, which is probably very easy to justify when you're at your level, David, because you're doing so many deals, and it's kind of a hindrance to not have that kind of system. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I looked at a lot of systems over the years, and, the nice thing is that you've got the openness to be able to customize things yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's guys out there that are really good with automation, and they can create amazing stuff with Podio, but I also see them not doing any deals. They're spending all their time playing with their automation.
Yeah.
Landspeed offers great support. Howard's fantastic. It gives you a place to keep everything, but yeah, I mean, the downside is it's not a true and blue, web-based product that was designed from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really nice and easy to use.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a learning curve. It does really force you to kind of learn processes, but because everything in it steps you through the process. But yeah, I mean, it's like database type programs. They can be a little clunky,
mm-hmm.
But it's very functional.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk or transition a little bit to the fact that you've been able to pull the plug on your job, which is a big, big milestone that a lot of people are after. And I want to just understand, like, how long did it take you from the moment you decided to do that to actually get there? And like, what were some of the biggest obstacles you had to overcome on your journey?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So, I go back to the stepping stones of revenue targets. First of all, in order to do that, it is a big step, and it requires some confidence. And confidence doesn't get built overnight. You got to do the business A plus B equals C, and do your routine and just stay at stuff and gradually build it. And then you get confidence that, hey, this kind of works. Let's keep going. Hey, this works really well. Why am I spending all my time on this job that I am miserable at and isn't really where I consider my future to be? And so your mindset gradually shifts as you get more and more confident. And I have a family, so it makes it a little bit harder. I mean, if somebody's young and single, I tell them just don't bother with the job. Live in your parents' basement, go live in a trailer, eat top ramen and tuna fish, and work 20 hours a day. In 2 years, you'll be sitting pretty. Mm-hmm. Don't waste your time at a job. But, when you're at a certain point, you got a family, it makes it a little bit more difficult to do that. So I had a certain revenue target. I wanted my cash flow from notes to be at least where my base salary was as a salesperson. Mm-hmm. And that would kind of be the minimum step off point, because I knew that pays my bills plus a little bit of leftover. Mm-hmm. And
when you say base salary, that's not your take home pay from your job, is it? Like, you got to factor in, okay, I got to pay taxes from this too. I got to pay health insurance. Like, is that also included in there?
The equivalent of the net,
okay, cool.
What I needed to live on. Mm-hmm. So, if somebody's thinking about that, I mean, that's what you want to factor in and have a little bit of fudge factor. Mm-hmm. So my plan was actually, and I wanted to go past that. I really wanted to be double that by the time when I actually quit. And I actually had a plan to work about 2 more years. Mm-hmm. But I was miserable. Yeah. And I was working about 60 hours a week, and in outside sales, that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
And so part of me said, well, why don't we change jobs? Let's do something that pays less, but I stay, I don't travel, and I can work 40 hours a week instead of a consistent 60, 70 plus travel, and continue to grow this. And then, so I was at the point where I was making equivalent to my base salary take home. Okay. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. And then what really made me launch was I started having discussions with my now partner. He had been a partner with my nephew for about 10 years, and they had great success in e-commerce and other businesses and whatnot. And he also had a lot of, so there was some credibility there because of the relationship with my nephew. And he also has a lot of land experience. He and his wife's with him, helps in the business as well. And we put together a really great plan, because the thing is, even if you get to the point where you're making that equivalent of what you were living on, you still have to fund the business over and above that. And if you want to grow it, you still got to have capital to buy property. Of course, there's capital out there to partner with people, but you still got to pay for all your marketing. And at this point, you're wanting to go bigger and better, and those costs go up. So we were just able to put together a great situation where I'm the operational partner, and he's funding not only the CapEx but also the operations. And we're to put a cordon term to it, we're 10xing it.
This is actually, I wasn't even planning on having this conversation, but it's kind of a big subtopic of partnerships and that kind of thing. So what exactly do you do in the business, and what does your partner do? Like what expertise did you bring to the table, and what did they bring to the table?
Right. So I think mine might be a little bit unique, where if you had, just two land investors getting together, but, certainly what I'm doing is I'm basically the operations partner. So
what does that mean?
I do nothing.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm managing all the VAs. I'm managing, making sure, I'm creating our directional path on, all right, what states and counties do we have on our roadmap? Mm-hmm. I'm in charge of that. Breaking down, analyzing data, downloading data, and dishing it out to the VAs to do the mailer, and doing all the pricing on that. I actually have a US VA now who is really good at doing comps, and even one of my Filipino VAs. So managing those processes so to make sure the acquisitions funnel is going and that machine is running. Mm-hmm. And then also now will be sales and marketing, managing it though, not running it, defining our roadmap and our processes on how we're going to do that, and staying on top of that. And then just, of course, reviewing the metrics on a weekly basis with my partners. Their responsibility, and so really anything, all that stuff to make sure the machine is running the day to day. What they're doing is they're providing the funding for deals. They're also paying for the overhead, the VA cost, the marketing cost, and all of that stuff until such a time as the business will be funding it itself. Mm-hmm. And our goal is a deal a day within about the next 90 days to be at that volume. Mm-hmm. So that's now the other resources that they bring, though, is they have multiple companies, and it's all virtual all over the place because they have they've got key people in IT, in web design, in programmers. Some are employees, some are contractors, but people that are vetted and been working with them a long time. They also they have resources like that, somewhat active in decision making, but I'm pretty much running the day to day.
How important was their involvement to your ability to leave your job? Like if you had never connected with them, would you have been able to do that?
I do think I would have been able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been a lot more stressful. I wouldn't be able to just say, hey, I'm going to start doing 10,000 mailers a month and, have all these resources to be able to execute that. I'd have to just still slowly climb. I would probably have accepted some outside capital and partnered with people on deals so that I could fund the overhead. So it would have changed. It would have been a lot more stressful.
And in this quest to find outside investments, which you found through this partner, was it the kind of situation where like you were trying to sell them on why you're worth investing in, or was it like they were coming to you and were like, hey, we want to be part of what you're doing. We see you're onto something.
Yeah, the latter. It was the latter. It's interesting because I had a few conversations with my nephew, and he'd every now and then chime in and look at what I was doing, and we'd have a phone call. And initially he was going to be one of the partners in this. And he was like, man, I love what you're doing. How do we scale it? How do we really scale it? And so we had some conversations back and forth. So it was he and his partner, who's now my partner. I'm just going to leave names out for the sake of their privacy. And so we just got a conversation going. And initially it was both of them wanted in because they both have some land background and different. My nephew's in land development and other various stuff. And he's doing a lot of VRBO stuff now. It was going to be all three of us. And at the last minute, my nephew pulled out and said, I've got a business venture going with just about every family member. And I think I want to be able to have one family member that I don't have to talk business with at holidays.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's actually interesting because like I haven't done a ton of partnership stuff, but I have done a few and they've never really gone where I wanted them to. We didn't walk away hating each other, but like, it wasn't great. Like it didn't succeed, so to speak. So I've always heard advice like just don't partner with family members, period, or anybody that you want to stay friends with because you just never know where things are going to go. Do you think that's wise advice or is that misguided in some way?
It's a hard one. I've heard that too. I used to work in a family business with my father and my brother, and our relationships improved significantly after we sold that company.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, but I wouldn't say that that's the rule, though. Everybody's different. I do think, though, that what people tend to do if it's a friend or a family member is get lazy on the contract side. I think it's even more important to have things in writing because now, and the contract is, I once heard Kathy Ireland speak. She's actually a great business person, by the way, not just a swimsuit model, but she said, this contract, it gets worked on hard. Every detail, every jot and tittle gets in there. So you have a clear understanding in writing, and then that gets put in the drawer. But if you ever need it, it's an objective thing now. Hey, look, this is what we agreed to. This is not personal. This is not my opinion or your opinion. So that's just my opinion.
No, man. I think that's actually really good. That's actually kind of the situation with Jaron when I hired him. Like we were really good friends and I was a little apprehensive about working with them because I didn't want anything to happen to us or us to get mad at each other. And I think at the end of the day, like it's always a possibility. I mean, I think it's a small possibility, but it's always there. But that point you said about the contract and paperwork becoming even more important, I think is really true. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. If it's cool for me to chime in there for a minute, I actually kind of come from the opposite side where pretty much every friend that I've had, except for like one that I can think of, in recent years, I've done some type of business with. And I think that if you're going to do a partnership, the way you go about it is clearly laying expectations from the get-go. and being very, very good at communicating and setting expectations and managing expectations well. And, like, for example, me and my wife, we've been married almost 8 years. It'll be 8 years in July. And we've worked together probably 6 out of the 8 years that we've been married. And I mean, like, our pillow talk a lot of the times has been like, hey, did you follow up on that lead? Did you do this? Did you do that? And sometimes it's, we've not had the most healthiest of boundaries, but it's worked because at the end of the day, we're fighting together and we're in the battle together. And so it definitely can work. You just have to do it in a way where you lay the groundwork, you lay the foundation very, very strongly.
Yeah. And that's just to chime in there as well. The spouse is a whole different situation as far as relationships, because you're with each other all the time. I know it can work great. I know some couples that they're just, man, they're on the same page. They're in sync. I'm sure that they have their marital disagreements. You have to, just anybody being around each other that much, and you're not going to always agree in the way to do something. I found I had my wife was working for me for a little while, but I think it was more like she was helping me, even though I considered her my partner. But we found that she just didn't enjoy the business that much, so she doesn't work with me anymore.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, my wife and I were actually, when we started dating in college, we ended up in a class together in the same group. We're working on some projects. And we learned pretty early on, like, we actually don't work well together. Like, we both get really just irritated, and we're still married though. And we ended up, our relationship grew. I think we just sort of realized very early on, like, that is not something we ought to do. Like, we should not be accountable to each other in terms of like a business relationship where we're working back to back in the same office all day long. Like, it's just not going to be pretty. So we both just kind of understand that, and we don't go there.
Yep. I'm on the same page with you. That's us.
Something that I was reading recently about the subject of partnerships that was really interesting is I read the author suggested that if you do approach a partnership, how he sees partnerships work best is if one party is only a financial and advisory kind of role, and then the other partner is actually running the operations day to day. Because otherwise you have Mr. Moneyman come in and be like, I don't like this color blue, and like ruin everything that this other guy's been working and, making a fuss over things that don't matter. So I don't know if, for our listeners or, for you guys, if that's been your experience as well, but it might be something to consider if you have somebody where, somebody has time and somebody has money that could make a good marriage, as long as it's expected that the person that's running operations calls shots at the end of the day.
I agree with that. That's how my current situation is set up. And so far it's been really, really good.
To some extent, this kind of reminds me of when I started to get parenting advice from other parents soon after I had our first kid. Because like, there's something like, it's worth paying attention to this kind of stuff, like listening to other people's opinions. However, like, every situation is a little bit different. And to just like take somebody's advice as the gospel truth, just because they happen to work with their kid, does not mean it's the right answer for my kid. So you sort of have to understand what's at work in your specific situation.
Absolutely.
What is your long-term plan at this point? I know you said your goal is to get to doing like a deal a day.
Yep.
Where do you see this going like 5 years from now?
We have a phased approach, and initially it is to get our 30 deals a month going, and the cash flow side of it. So we would probably end up being about 70-30, 80-20 terms to cash deals. But, you really can't control that. In my mind, even if you intend to do it one way or another, your buyer wants to buy it this way or that way.
Yeah,
fine.
Point.
Never going to turn down your cash,
Mm-hmm.
So and that's with, kind of certain price point properties, and we'll mix in some higher end stuff, and then add various strategies to that, infill lots and higher end stuff. But really the focus is on, bread and butter that's at a little bit higher price point than where most of the beginners play, just to kind of weed out a lot of that competition and whatnot. And to be as spread out far and wide, so we have a diversity of inventory and can hit a big buyer's pool.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at also doing a potentially some funding for other investors and buying and selling notes and things like that.
Just out of curiosity, have you had any deals go like wrong, like go really bad, where you thought one thing was going to pan out and it just went horrifically in the wrong direction?
In houses, I have one really bad deal. In land, I've not had. I mean, I had one deal where it was. I just didn't. I just kind of got lazy on my due diligence because I was only paying $1,000 for it. I was a little too flippant, a little too overconfident, and the data on the location was really, really bad. And it ended up being this, I think it was an acre in the middle of a farmer's driveway. And I thought it was next to his property on the river. And so I think I still own it. I've never done anything about it. I'll probably just let it go on taxes. Just to, so this is what I love about this business. You can royally screw up and like, okay, I lost $1,000 cost of doing business.
Well, that answer does not surprise me at all, that you have had it with houses, but the ones you've had with land, first of all, were as a result of poor due diligence, which, by the way, I've been there totally with you. So I understand how and why that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even in the worst case scenario, like, I mean, yeah, it stinks, but it's not like it just sidelines you and you just go homeless. Like, it's not a disaster. It's just kind of, oh, it stinks. Try not to do it next time type thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just, you keep moving. And I mean, I guess my biggest lesson in being, well, I mean, anybody will tell you in being successful in anything is stay the course, develop a routine and stay the course. And this is a great business for doing that. You can develop a routine. And I also tell people, look, if you learn from Seth, or if you learn from Jack or Steve or Mark, do exactly what they say for your first 10 deals. Just A plus B equals C. And then once you've got you've developed some expertise after 10 deals or so, then tweak this and tweak that, or marry two philosophies for you. But I think a lot of people get the shiny little object syndrome, and I've been guilty of that. Oh, that sounds better. I'll try it this way. You end up 3 feet from gold all the time.
Yeah, I agree, man. I remember when I first took my first course 10 years ago now, and like that course material was like very, very, very helpful and important for the first handful of deals I did. But like pretty quickly after that, it became very, very unimportant. Like I kind of figured it out. Like I got the foundation going. I can officially start exploring and doing my own thing. But yeah, it's like, I think it's super instrumental for a lot of people just in getting their bearings, but they don't have to stick to that if they want to try other things and see what else works.
Yeah. Well, and like, I mean, equating that to mailers too, people will back people that are just starting and they don't have a lot of money to spend on it. They'll back the numbers down and say, well, okay, I should get a deal every 300 letters. Doesn't mean you're going to get a deal if you only send 300 letters. If you send a couple thousand, it's like somebody termed it this way. I know there's a more technical term, but it was the law of the not big enough number. You just don't have a big enough sampling rate. So, and it's even comes back to that in doing deals. And the reason why, make up your mind, okay, I'm going to do exactly what the teacher said for enough deals to where I feel, okay, now, if you do one or two and then you change course, you're going to have inconsistent results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have there been any big surprises for you? Like when you look back to 2014, when you first got started, does anything jump out as being like, whoa, I did not expect that, for better or worse?
That's a good question. I haven't really been super, not anything really flabbergasted. I haven't been super surprised by anything in the land business.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think.
I wonder if that's because you had experience with houses. So like you've already sort of seen, how bad it can get, and
yeah,
kind of hard to be surprised after that.
yeah, and I think, I hear people complain about dealing with, they don't want to deal with terms because they, dealt with a couple of headaches. And again, it comes back to the not big enough number. If you've got one or two or three notes and you got you're babysitting, just stay the course and keep going. It's like rental properties. You got to deal with tenants.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have good property and the outlook looks good and it's making you money,
Mm-hmm.
look, the simple fact of life, we've got to deal with people.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I did have an interesting, here's another one that went south, and I don't know if I'm all hugely surprised, but if you do enough deals, this is just going to happen. It's another one of those things, just part of the business. But I had a property that I sold in terms, and the guy he dug a big hole. I don't know how he got it dug, and then he bought some non-operating motorhome cheap and had it towed out there. Basically, pushed it so it was like a hole leveled out,
Mm-hmm.
so that when he pushed the motorhome into it, it would come up about 3 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the wind skirts on an RV.
Mm-hmm.
And he started this little compound on there. He started just like adding on with wood, adding on to this motorhome. And he would do these YouTube videos. It was unbelievable. And anyway, all of a sudden I started getting code enforcement notices.
Mm.
And it's 4 hours away. I'm not going to go down there and deal with it. I think it was a property I paid $1,200 for, and I sold it to him for like $12,000 on terms. But he'd paid on it for about 3 years. So I think I'd recouped about $3,000. I ended up just walking. I just let him have it.
Mm-hmm.
But
I actually had a really similar situation to that. And I handled it the same way, where somebody parked a 50-year-old motorhome on I guess it was theirs. They were buying it with seller financing, but parked this really old motorhome, stopped paying me, disappeared off the face of the earth. I had already made all my money back. So I was just kind of like, well,
is it worth the hassle?
I don't really want to deal with this. I'm just going to kind of let it go.
Right.
So again, like I didn't lose any money. I probably could have made more if I went through the motions of getting it back, but it was a pretty cheap deal in the first place. So
yeah. Well, this guy also became a little bit violent and threatening.
Yeah.
So
that's not good.
Yeah. I still haven't deeded it to him though. I mean, I'm just it's probably going on 3 years. So I'm just going to let the county take it.
How was he threatening you or getting violent? What was he doing?
It's been a couple of years, but it was it was on the phone and screaming at me. Okay. I don't remember the exact threats, but I was just like, I looked at the numbers. I'm like, yeah, all right, not worth it.
Man, don't you love land? You can do that. That's just awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, try walking away from a rental house.
Yeah, you can't do that. Well, hey, to wrap this thing up, what is your biggest word of advice for new investors who are looking to get started?
My biggest word of advice is set goals where you can bite the chunks off. Look at where do you want your future to be? This is a business that you can run on the side with as much effort as you want to put into it is what you'll get out of it. But consistency and routine and just keep doing the have to do's every day and make sure you get those done and the rest is going to take care of itself. and don't give up. Just stay focused. And if you've got X budget and you've got X amount of time, be consistent with that budget and time, and eventually it'll keep growing.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Well, David, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. There's tons of things to gain from what you just talked about. A lot of lessons to learn from what you've been through. Not that you have to do this, but if people want to check out your business or get a hold of you or anything like that, other than the REtipster Club forum, which you are a part of, is there a way that people can get a hold of you or check out what you got going on?
They can check out our websites, libertylandsales.com and milehighruralland.com.
Cool.
You can also look me up on Facebook.
Sweet. Yeah, I will. I'll be sure to link to both of those websites in the show notes. By the way, this is episode number 36. So if you want to see the numerous links and resources we've talked about here, check out retipster.com/36. But again, David, thanks so much. Appreciate your time. Hopefully we can talk again soon.
Awesome. Enjoyed it. Good to meet you guys. Thanks.
Well, that was pretty cool. What'd you think, Jaron?
Yeah, man. I thought it was awesome. It was actually really timely because I've been talking to my friend Willie, who I interviewed on our YouTube channel. We should probably get him on the podcast at some point.
Should.
He's very, very interesting. And he was talking about Moon Clerk and the whole shebang that we just talked about. So it was really cool.
Yeah. I'll, again, in the show notes, I'll link to the YouTube video where Jaron interviewed Willie Goldberg. That was one of the better interviews I've seen. Lots of cool stuff you guys talked about.
Yeah, man. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was cool to talk to David finally. I've known him for years now. He's always been super helpful and had lots of good, nuggets and things to share and ideas worth chewing on a little bit. So it was just fun to hear more about what he's been up to and how he's gotten to where he is.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I really want to look into those bots, man, because, Tim, so for those of you who don't know, right now I'm being trained by a Facebook ad expert named Tim. He's our mysterious friend from Canada. And he actually said that he doesn't think that in the duration of our coaching together that we're going to be able to have enough time to touch bots, but he pointed me in a direction of some courses and some things that I can take later after I've exhausted the current coaching situation. So I'm pretty excited. That would be, I don't know if you can use a Facebook bot for a Facebook group, but if you could, that could essentially automate all of the pain points of dealing with Facebook buy-sell trade groups. So it could be a big deal in the land business.
I don't really understand, I know what a bot is. I encounter them from time to time on Reddit, and I think our forum actually even has a bot in the REtipster Club. If you want to learn how to use the forum, you can ask it a question, it will just respond to you with answers and that kind of thing. But it's almost like I don't even fully understand how that works. Do you have to program this thing and train it with the answers somehow, or does it just knows what to do? I don't get it.
Yeah,
how does that work?
Again, I don't really know either, but I know at just a high level, you essentially put in the responses, and you might be able to put in several different responses based on several different, if sequence one is prospect says, hey, I saw you listed this property, tell me more details, or prospect one says, hey, how are you? And you can program it based to respond different ways. And then it uses AI to essentially be a person that's not actually a person. It's a computer. Is
this kind of like Siri on your iPhone?
Similar to Siri, yeah, but you program it through the back end of Facebook, I believe. Again, this is above my pay grade currently, but it's something that's interesting.
Well, and that's the thing about, I've heard people talk about Siri it's this amazing technology. And I guess it sort of is, but I got to tell you, every time I summon Siri on my phone and ask it a real question that I would actually ask a person, like it doesn't really give me an answer. Or like best case scenario, it'll just pull up a website and do a Google search for what I asked about. It's like, hey, I know how to do a Google search. What I'm asking for is an actual solution to my question.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is like, I haven't been that impressed with Siri. Maybe I'm just asking it the wrong things or something. But
I know with this though,
probably limited in what they can do.
Yeah, for sure there is. But most of the conversations go on buy-sell trade groups. They go, hey, what's the property? What are the terms? Can I go look at the property? Like it's the same conversation over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah. So if you could, in that type of situation, then they said, okay, I'm going to go check out the property. And then I don't know if there's a way for the bot to notify you like, hey, this person's checking out the property. But if there is a way to do that, that could be pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, you could even just program the bot to say, look at the listing, look at the listing. Look at the listing, because usually the questions people ask, like I've already answered many times over in the listing. Just look before you call me.
100%, man. 100%.
Yeah. Cool,
I really like doing these more free flow things at the end. You know, I think, I don't know if we've mentioned it before, but I think the heart behind it is just for people who want to just get straight to the point, get to the meat of the interview, then they can just cut this whole section off. But for people who kind of want to hang out and hear a little bit more banter between you and me, then they can. And I really like that. I'm much more of a free-flowing kind of guy than stick to the questions, move on kind of guy.
For sure. Were there any, there was one question it came up in my mind for David before we finished that I never actually asked, but I'm curious how much, because I believe he's got sort of a sales background. Curious how important that has been in his land business. Like, has that been a huge asset for him, or is it just kind of not really matter? Because I know, like, when I was working my job basically as a glorified credit analyst for a small business financing company, there was a lot of stuff I learned in that job that I could apply directly to the land business. So I kind of like used my job to my benefit on my own side hustle gig. And I think that happens a lot. It's just a matter of finding, okay, what am I getting from my job that I can apply towards this business I'm running? And it sounds like a lot of the interaction between customers and his company might happen at the VA level. So I don't know if he actually does much of that anymore. But I wonder how important his sales background was to the growing of his company.
Yeah, man, it's a good question. We should ask that.
Yeah,
I really like the concept of automating the business to where like you have a checkout function. And do you have any insights, Seth, on what you personally would use if you were not going to use Stripe and you weren't going to use Moonclerk, like for servicing owner financing loans?
Yeah, I mean, in the past, when I was doing a lot more of it, I was using the loan servicing company. And the nice thing, it was called Del Toro Loan Servicing. And at the time, I was paying $15 per month per note that was being serviced, which I just added as a servicing fee to the borrower's monthly payment. So they were basically paying it, and none of them ever gave me pushback about that. But I think it's a little more complex when you use a loan servicing company, just because you have a whole nother entity involved. Whereas with something like Zimple Money or Geekpay, it's just up to me to make sure the system is running and it'll do its own thing. But with things like 1098 forms, keeping track of balances, that kind of thing, escrow accounts, the loan servicing company will do a lot of that for you. Whereas when you're using one of those software services, I think there's some functionality built into them that can certainly help, but you're ultimately on your own to make sure like the IRS forms get sent out the right time with the right information on them. And it was kind of nice to have a loan servicing company just do that for me, so I didn't have to think about it. But yeah, and another issue I've always had, it sort of puts me in an awkward place, sort of, because I know it is totally possible, practically speaking, to use a credit card processing company and have people pay you via credit card for your real estate. Like, you can do it. Are you supposed to do it? No. All of these processing companies have rules in place saying you can't use it for that. And if you do, you're kicked off the system. But so like, it's one of those things, as an educator in the space, I can't in good conscience tell people to use these things for something they're not intended for, because they're sort of like breaking the law when they do it. However, like, they can do it and they will probably get away with it. Like, there's a good chance no one's ever going to catch them. And it's way easier when you can do it that way. So, you know.
This guy, David, though, said that he had one that they said in writing that it was
the Heartland Payment Services. I got to look into that. I think I actually vaguely remember seeing a post from him about that. Maybe I'm making this up in my head, but yeah, I should look into that and just see, like, how does that work? How are you guys able to do it and nobody else is?
Yeah.
Need to figure out what's going on there. But yeah, that's people want to check that out. I would encourage them to do that. Just know that the liability is not on me. What happens to you?
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, man, are you okay if we share what happened, what I was able to experience with you when I went and visited you at Grand Rapids last Monday?
Yeah, let's do it.
Man, okay, guys. So I just want to share this thing because this was something really cool for me to just be a part of. So not this week, but last week, I went up to Grand Rapids for my 6-month review. So we just kind of have this loose general guide where every 90 days or so, we just kind of touch base and, in terms of if I'm actually doing a good job and if Seth is satisfied and how I can improve. And we talk about goals and so on and so forth for the company and all of that. So I go up to Grand Rapids and he takes me to a restaurant that him and his boss used to go to for their 6-month reviews. And so we go in and we're sitting there, and as we pull up to our booth, guess who's sitting right behind us? His boss from like 10 years ago or whatever it was at his job, that when he wasn't really, he's talked a lot about it when he worked in banking, and it was a good job, but it just was kind of soul sucking and not what he was created to do, long story short. And it was crazy because he was sharing with me, like, this was like a full circle moment where when he quit his job, nobody took him serious. Like, everyone was like, oh, you're starting real estate? That's cute. That's awesome. Haha, that's not going to work out. But now, not only did he start his real estate business, now he's running an entire online community of education. So Seth's boss was like, what are you doing these days, Seth? And he's like, oh, I'm meeting with my employee and running an amazing real estate blog. And you could just see the look in her eyes. She's like, oh, really? I want to run a blog too. Like, it was epic. It was one of those moments where it was like, not to go spiritual on you guys, but there's a scripture that says God oppresses the proud and exalts the humble. And I just saw the humble exalted. Like, I just saw the fulfillment of that prophecy, because Seth's one of the most humble guys that I know, and it was epic. So I just wanted to share it with you guys.
It was pretty cool. And to be clear, I actually got along pretty well with this boss. It's not like we had any animosity or anything like that. And she's a great person. But it was one of those situations where the background was, it was like my first job in banking. And to be fair, like, I was a pretty slow learner in terms of figuring out how to do a lot of stuff. And she had to help me learn a lot of it. And I think because of that, there was always sort of this, I don't know, just sort of this undertone of like, yep, Seth's just kind of like this little kid. He doesn't really know what he's doing. We just need to kind of put up with him while he's here. That's kind of how I felt. I don't know if that's true or not, but I always just kind of felt, I don't know if the word emasculated is the word, but I just sort of felt like nobody really ever thought I'd amount to much. And, when I actually quit my job, some people, in much nicer words, actually told me that, like, man, you're such this unassuming, like, I had no idea you were doing all this behind the scenes. And people were like trying to take me out to lunch and like pick my brain and figure out how I did it. People who like were like really high up in their companies. And for all these years, I was like this little, peon, like this nobody. And they were these huge titled individuals in their companies. And all of a sudden, like, the tables had turned and they were trying to figure out how I did it and all this stuff. And this was just another one of those moments when, I don't know, it was just a very wonderful time in life to see that happen. So
it was epic. It was one of the coolest things I think I've ever experienced. Just to watch, it was just epic. It was awesome.
What are the chances that we would just, I mean, of all the restaurants in Grand Rapids we could have gone to, we went to the same one at the same time, sitting in the same booth next, just what in the world? That can't be a coincidence, you know?
No, it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing that. That was, I forgot we were going to talk about that at some point, but yeah, man, it was cool. So for those of you out there who think you can quit your job and have the audacity to dream, continue to do that, because I'm sure you can do it, regardless of whether people are taking you seriously or not. You know, if there's a will, there's a way. And I wouldn't want anybody to give up on their dream just because people aren't treating them with the respect that they deserve or treating them in a serious manner. So, but yeah, man, I think that kind of wraps it up for this episode. So
guys, please help us out. The only way that this podcast gets shared among the internet and the world is by you leaving a review on iTunes. Rate us however you want. If you think we suck, give us a 1-star. We want honesty. But you know, the truth is we really need you guys to help spread our message. So if you guys could head over to iTunes and leave us an honest review, that would really, really help us out.
Yeah, absolutely. And subscribe if you feel led to do that. And also, you know, take the episode or the URL for the show notes, retipster.com/36. Share it with anybody and everybody who you think could benefit from hearing what we talked about here today. So, but again, thank you, dear listener, for being part of our lives and for giving your time to listen to this conversation. We love you guys, and we'll talk to you next time.